we're moving through the book of Ecclesiastes together. And we're in chapter 3, so just kind of making our way month after month through this interesting and fascinating book. I was telling somebody the other day, we were doing Ecclesiastes, and they're like, that's a downer. And at first glance, it does look that way, doesn't it? I mean, by verse 2 of chapter 1, he basically gives us the premise of the book. He says, meaningless, utterly meaningless, a chasing after the wind, right? Havel, utterly havel, smoke, he says, vapor, he says. All of the things that you and I think are so important and we're giving our life to them, he's like, it's like a smoke ring. It looks like it's something, but you grasp it and it's gone. It feels safe and secure. You build your life on it, and then the next minute, it's failing you. Very practically speaking, he's speaking about things like success. If you're chasing success, you'll never be more successful because there's always somebody a little bit more successful. If you're chasing money, you'll never be satisfied. If you're chasing significance, it'll never fulfill you. Meaningless. Havel, he says. I was at the mall the other day, window shopping, and I noticed this person walking in front of me. For those of you who've ever spent time in the mall, it's like a social experiment. It really is like a subcategory of humanity all in one place, and so you can just observe people. And I was pretty confident that the person walking towards me spent a lot of time looking at themselves in the mirror. Have you ever met someone like that where it's like, I think probably you spend a lot of time figuring this thing out right here and thinking it through, pursuing it, getting it right. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, after a life lived, is reflecting back on his life, and he would say, Havel, smoke. Sounds kind of like a downer. And yet every week what we find is that it actually, in some strange way, takes pressure off of us. Because if you really think about it, as Solomon deconstructs all the things that you and I think are so important, if we end up agreeing with him that they're really not that important, maybe we don't have to live for them and die for them. Maybe there's something better. Maybe there's something more fulfilling. And so I find by chapter 3, pressure is being released off of me as I think about the things that I have held up to be most important. And when Solomon looks at me and says, Havel, I wonder if that doesn't take the pressure off of you as well, the things that you are holding on to so tightly. Lord Jesus, that you would open up your word for us, that you would help us to see what it is that you want us to see, the Havel that you want us to see in our own lives as we continue this journey with you. In Jesus' name, amen. Before we get to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I was reflecting this week on an opportunity I had some time ago to go to this massive art exhibit. It was a really fascinating experience where hundreds of people came into an auditorium to watch live art being produced on stage. I'm a person who loves art. I grew up in a home that valued art. Art is a big part of our family story. And being able to be in an auditorium filled with hundreds of people and watch artists actually create was something that was deeply moving to me. I remember one artist in particular got on stage, just an empty stage with a canvas and a set of acrylic paint and a few paintbrushes. And there we sat in awe as we watched this artist take this empty canvas and cover it with color. Imagine looking into a kaleidoscope and looking somehow at the world. It's like almost like looking at the world filled with color. What he was doing on that canvas was beautiful. The way that the palette was working to each other, and I found myself deeply drawn into whatever it was, some abstract painting he was creating. It was deeply moving to me. Until he grabbed the one color that didn't seem to make sense, and that was black. He grabbed black and he began to smear it all over the canvas. And I thought, surely he was ruining this beautiful masterpiece that he was creating. Until the very end, he flipped the canvas upside down. And sure enough, he was painting the figure of Christ upside down. And you didn't know he was doing it until the very end. Isn't it interesting how things in your life don't make sense until you're kind of through it. Isn't it interesting how some things don't really make sense to you until you can look back on it? Life is like that. The big idea for Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is that God makes everything beautiful in time. God makes everything beautiful in time. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, starting in verse 1. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. A time. A time for everything. And it feels like a burden. Seasons in your life can feel that way. Because seasons change quickly, don't they? One moment, it's relational satisfaction, and then the next moment, it's discord. One moment, it's the joy of work, and the next moment, what am I doing with my life? One moment, it's life without kids, baby, and in the next moment, it's sleeplessness, and that moment seems to last for years. Feels like a burden. The changing of seasons. You know, weather just has 4 seasons, but life has dozens. You know, the changing of seasons can feel both positive or negative. Like our text says, between loving and hating. Some seasons are filled with what feels like love. And you're connected to the people around you. There's joy around the dinner table. And some seasons, it's like you're just not seeing eye to eye. Any married people can attest to these change of seasons. And any unmarried people can attest to the fear of the change of these seasons. Yes, this is a thing. New seasons can feel busy, and they can also feel slow, just like our text says, gathering stones and scattering them. When you're young and ambitious, like in your 20s and 30s, and potentially even into your 40s, it's the process of gathering stones. Like when you watch a little kid on the beach, like trying to find all of his or her favorite rocks. They are voracious in their attempt to gather all the rocks. And what do they want to do? They want to show you all the rocks, and to the adult eye, of course, all the rocks are exactly the same as the other ones, but they're precious to that child. And for those in your 20s and 30s and 40s, you are in this season of achievement. You're gathering stones. Things that make you feel like you made it in the world. Working a little more hours, a little more responsibility, doing something that feels significant to yourself or the people around you. And then you get into your 50s and your 60s and your 70s. Have you ever observed people in their 50s and 60s and 70s transition from gathering stones to scattering? They start to give away responsibility. They start to focus their attention on what they believe truly matters. It's achievement, and then another season changes. New seasons can also change quickly, like mourning and dancing. 1 minute it's sadness because you've lost a relative, just like on Heidi's side of the family recently, someone lost a mother. Very sad, mourning. Lament, sadness. Comes on quick, doesn't it? Loss. And yet in the very next season, it's dancing and realizing that that family member is now with Christ. In a form of eternal glory that one day all who are in Christ will experience also. How quickly the seasons can change. New seasons can also be difficult to accept, like in verse 9. It feels like a burden when a season changes. It feels like toil. Many of us don't like the change of seasons. The transition for parents, for example, transitioning from no kids to kids, is a joy because you have a baby, but also like, I just kind of lost my life a little bit here. You ever felt that? Change of season? It can feel like a burden. Even a good thing like having kids. Changing jobs can feel like the shift of season can feel like a burden. Because all of a sudden the learning curve is sky high, and all of a sudden you're in the fire and you're trying to figure it out. The change of seasons can feel burdensome. And we don't like change. The other day, I was reflecting on how easily it is to walk through stores now without a mask on. And like, it's so easy, right? Like, nobody asks you, nobody looks at you, there's no little stand for you to take on that. Like, it's like, so easy. But how hard it was for it to even get used to getting to, and we all got used to it, didn't we? It was easy to wear a mask, right? After some kicking and screaming. And we all got kind of used to it. It was like, yeah, this is life. I did this for 2 years. You know, thought nothing of it. Easy. You know? And how easy it is then to go back to not wearing a mask, and yet we kick and scream about transitions, because none of us like change. The issue's change. We don't like change. It makes us feel uncomfortable. We don't like upsetting the status quo. And seasons upset the status quo. The reality is that fighting seasons is like wearing shorts in the winter. If you've ever met somebody that wears shorts in the winter, you go, why? Why are you fighting the fact that it's cold outside? I remember a guy in college would never wear like shoes. He'd always wear sandals. It'd be raining outside. Always wear sandals. It bothered me. I found myself just focusing on his feet during college class. What are you doing wearing sandals? You should be wearing shoes. Or finding someone that wears shorts when it's cold outside. It's like, this just doesn't make... Why are you fighting the season? And seasons in your life feel that way. You can't fight the season that you're in. Are you in that tired season? Are you in that relationally stuck season? Are you in that wondering season? Are you in that fulfilled season? What season of life are you in? Fighting the season is fruitless. Solomon says there's a season for everything. How would you define the season of life that you're in? Recently, a guy asked me to mentor him. He makes about $500,000 a year. He's very successful. I asked him, as I was thinking about seasons, what season of life are you in? He thought about it deep and hard. I thought he might say the season of success or achievement. He actually said, I'm in the season of tiredness. He said, everything I do is tired. I think tired thoughts. I work in a tired way. Everything I do feels tired. See, not everything that looks like it's supposed to on the outside is actually the way it is on the inside. What season are you actually in? Not the one that people observe you to be in. Just because you're, for example, let's say my parents are about to be retired, doesn't mean that they're in the retired season. What's going on in the inside? What season are you really in? There are at least 4 seasons of life. As I think about the seasons of life that are represented in this room, for example, anywhere between, let's say, 0 and 20 years of age, I might call the season of life you're in the dreaming season. Dreaming about what could be. Teachers are asking you, what are you going to do? And what are you going to achieve? They're asking you to perform on tests so that you can get your goal. And you're in the season of dreaming about what your life might look like, what college you might go to, if you'll be married one day, if you'll have kids. You're dreaming. If you're anywhere between, let's just guess, 20 and 40-ish, you might be in a period of, let's call it, achieving. You're on the ladder. You are climbing some level of success. You're trying to use some of the skills you've acquired to do something that you feel is significant. And so you're using those tools to achieve whatever it is that you feel is worth achieving. If you're anywhere between 40-ish and 60-ish, you might be in a season I might call stewarding. You no longer believe yourself to be on this achievement ladder, but now you actually know some stuff. You're actually at a place in your life where you have some level of confidence in the world or yourself. You're at a place where now you might still be contributing to the world in some very significant ways, but you're stewarding your resources. Or maybe if you're 60s and above, you might be in the giving period of life. We are no longer thinking like a dreamer or an achiever or a steward. You're thinking about how you can give to those who are coming up behind you. Maybe you're focusing on grandkids, or maybe you're focusing on people at your work that are next generation leaders, and you're pouring into them. You might be in a giving season. You see, there are at least 4 big macro brushstrokes of seasons in your life, but there are dozens of seasons in every one of our lives, particular seasons. A lot of seasons, right? No wonder we're kind of all walking around confused. You're in your 20s, you're in your 60s, so you have a particular season that you're in, and then you got dozens of seasons, even the ones that Solomon lists here in the first 8 or 9 verses. And no wonder you get to the point where it's like, just trying to grasp, what is my life about? And what do I find important? And where's this really thing going? And what's God doing in it all? There's good news for whatever season of life you're in. Verse 11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Notice he's saying everything is not beautiful, or everything is beautiful. He's not saying everything is beautiful. Cancer is not beautiful. Child abuse is not beautiful. War is not beautiful. No, he says God has made, everybody say made, everything beautiful for its own time. In other words, God is in the business of taking things that are in the season that you're in and using them, transforming them, renewing them in another season. Here's a basic idea, extremely basic, but super important that you hear this in its simplicity. There are seasons to life. You have a life. So that means that there are seasons in your life. What season of life are you in? How about relationally? How is your connectedness to people, family, and friends? I was speaking to a friend of mine recently who was describing to me a period of relational connectedness that he had not felt for 2 years, having been under COVID. I haven't seen anybody. Start to see people again, in person. It's amazing, he said. How about you? How are you doing relationally? What about raising little kids, for all of you who have little kids in the room? What season of life are you in? Are you in that raising a newborn season, where it's a lot of output for a very needy, obsessive child? Or are you in that other season? The one where they're taking everything off your bookshelves and you're just trying to put it all, they're just trying to find some level of order in this household season. Or are you in that other season where they start to have their own life and you're in that little bit of a worry season, kind of wondering what choices they're going to have to make in their own selves? Or maybe you're in that other season where your kids are adults and you're watching them live their life and wish you could direct them more, but you can't because their life is theirs. What season are you in related to your family? What about physically? What's the season that you're in physically? Are you in the overweight season or the underweight season? Macronutrient dense season or macronutrient lean season? You eating a lot of cupcakes or you eating a lot of meat? What you doing? Right? What you doing? What season are you in? How about emotionally? What's the season that you're in emotionally right now? You feel good? Feel depressed? Wondering about the future or confident in it? What season are you in? What about spiritually? You connected to God right now? Or you like, you know what? I don't even know what it sounds like. Which one? Or somewhere in between the two? Or what about financially? Are you hustling on the lower third where you're like, I don't have enough to make rent? Or are you hustling on the top of that ladder where you have enough to make rent but you're hustling to keep what you got? Or are you somewhere in the middle-ish? What season are you in financially? See, it's a very basic idea that life has seasons. And if you have a life, that means you have a season. And if you have a season, what season are you in? Solomon might say that your season needs a perspective. That whatever season you're in this moment, new season, new perspective. New season, new perspective. New perspective that God makes everything beautiful in time. That God makes everything beautiful in time. This is great news. This is good news. This is good news that whatever season you're in, God will make it beautiful in time. But why is it so hard to see what He's doing when you're in it? Why is that so hard to see what He's doing when you're in it? Verse 11 actually speaks to this. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to end. I like how the TEV translation puts it. God never gives us the satisfaction of fully understanding what He does. You ever felt like that? When you're in a season and you don't really get what God's doing. You may get it in part, or a portion of, or some angle of, or some shade of, but you can't totally get it or wrap your head around it. I don't get what He's doing with my job right now. I don't get what He's doing with my tiredness right now. I don't get what He's doing in my marriage right now. I don't get what He's doing in my finances right now. I don't even know where I'm supposed to be living right now, and so I don't get what He's doing yet. Solomon might say that if you're in a new season, you need a new perspective, and that is that God makes everything beautiful in time. And what you know, that is, the season that you're in, needs a new perspective, that perspective. And if you had that perspective, even though you don't know exactly what God's doing in it, it might be enough to carry it through. Solomon knows a few things. Verse 11b. He knows, for example, God, He has also set eternity in the human heart. You know, you're longing for a better season. For a better season is really a longing for heaven. The desire you have for, gosh, I'm just so tired of raising little babies. I just want peace. Well, that peace is coming in abundance. In a house with many rooms. Oh, I just want a season with vocational significance. Well, that season is coming in the new creation. Finally and fully, when you have a job to do. Revelation 21 actually teaches us that we'll have work in heaven. Isn't that good news? You're not going to be sitting on clouds with a harp with a little cherub. You know, I can't think of any worse hell, actually. Isn't it nice that the universe is ever expanding, gorgeous and brilliant? There are more galaxies in the sky that you and I can ever count. Isn't it good that we're not locked into one tiny little inch of the universe, but in fact, God says, and He gave His life for the world, for the cosmos. It's all our domain. It all belongs to our King. Isn't that good? Isn't it good that when you are feeling like you're kind of wondering if you'll ever feel relationally connected to friends and family again, deeply, that impulse in you is a longing for the connectedness that you will have in heaven? When you die, if you're in Christ, your very next awareness will be the deep relatedness that you will have with billions of people that God has also made in his image. Best family reunion ever. Where everybody knows your name. Best Cheers episode ever. Best Friends episode ever. Without all the sin. Isn't it good news that God has set eternity in your heart? Solomon knows this. Verse 12, he also knows, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live. Solomon knows that it's good to feel happy and do good. He knows that about you. Happiness is good. I was once walking in Vancouver and I saw this guy in full clown makeup. He was like willing to take pictures with you for money. So I stopped and I said, why have you chosen a clown to be a person that takes pictures with tourists? He said very simply, because I'd rather laugh than cry. Isn't it so true that we all want to feel good? Solomon knows this is actually a good impulse that you have. Like, happiness is good for you. Even psychologically, it's good for you. If I put my other psychologist hat on, I would tell you all about what happens in the human brain when you're positive and lighthearted. I could also talk to you about all the things that happen in your psychology when you are negative and self-loathing. And you and I anecdotally understand the difference. Happiness is better than sadness. Lightheartedness is better than heavy-heartedness. Solomon knows this to be true about you, and also to do good, to use your life to benefit others. These are good things that Solomon knows. Or verse 13, he knows that each of them may eat and drink and find their satisfaction in their toil. This is the gift of God. To put it another way, Solomon might say, it's good to have fellowship and to work. It's good to have fellowship and to work. Or verse 14, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. To put it another way, it would be to say that it's good to know that your future isn't your responsibility. Your future isn't your responsibility only. And if you know that, you'll honor God for it. You'll give him glory for it. You don't want the responsibility of your future being on your shoulders. For any of you that have ever felt, I just don't know what I'm going to do in my life. I just don't know if I'm going to make it. Right? It's a heavy burden, don't you think? I just don't know if it's going to work out for me. It's a heavy burden, don't you think? And if you are without Christ, that is a heavy burden. Because it kind of is on you to make something for your life. But if you're in Christ, if you believe that there's a God who has ordered the universe and is using you to participate in this beautiful creation he has created, it means that the future, your future, is in his hands. And you participate willingly, graciously, even skillfully, but you don't do it because it's on you to make it happen. You do it to participate with God. So what does Solomon know? Solomon knows that there are seasons to life, and seasons for everything, and seasons are up and down, and they change. Life has, 4 seasons in nature, but dozens of seasons in our life. There are big macro seasons, like the ones we experience generationally, and there are tiny seasons, the ones that you and I are all in financially, emotionally, and spiritually. Solomon knows all of that. And in the midst of all of those seasons, Solomon knows a few things he can put his flag on. He knows that any longing you have is a longing for heaven. He knows that it's good for you to feel happy and to do good. He knows that it's good for you to have fellowship and to do good work. And he knows that your future isn't up to you. And if you knew that, you'd honor God for it. He knows that God, in any season that you're in, will make things beautiful in its time. He knows this to be true. And knowing that can change the perspective for any season of life that you're in. So Solomon reflects for us in 2 seasons of his life that he needs a change of perspective. Judgment for sin and death. Verse 15. Whatever is has already been, and what will be has been before. God will call the past to account. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. I said to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. I also said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like animals. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. Smoke. All go to the same place. All come from dust. And to dust all return. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? Solomon reflects on judgment for sin and the reality of death, and he's basically stating that these realities are evidence that we need God to make things beautiful in its time. If you've ever lived with any level of sin in your life, don't you hope God makes things beautiful in its time? And you see that addiction that you got keeps coming back from time to time. God, just waiting for you to make things beautiful. Make something out of this mess, I think. Heidi was recently at a kids camp, and she had the opportunity to speak with one of the kids in her cabin. And one of the kids in her cabin confessed to her that she's in 6th grade, and she fears death. It's something that she thinks about a lot. It keeps her up at night. She's worried. Maybe you can relate. If you've ever experienced any level of death in your life, you know that sometimes that can feel scary, particularly when you don't have a lot of income or you don't have a lot of success in your life. It seems like this might be the only inevitable outcome of your life. You know that it's coming. It has come to others. It may come to you soon. And maybe if you're a little bit more insulated, you've lost friends or family members, you too have felt the pain of death. This young girl felt that pain at her young age. Solomon might say that the realities of death and the realities of sin are evidence that we're just longing for God to make it beautiful in its time. God makes something beautiful out of this mess. In your season, when are you ready for God to make beautiful in its time? In your season, you know, the one that you're in, because your life has seasons. In the season that you're in, when are you ready for God to make beautiful in its time? Speaking to a neighbor this week, and he's working a new job that he really enjoys. You ever felt that? You're deeply satisfied in like what you're doing. You're like, man, like I'm in my lane. This feels good. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. There's a place of kind of convergence, and it feels satisfying. He was in that place. I said, well, that's really interesting. I said, but how is it affecting like your marriage? He said very simply, we're getting better. It's interesting how one change in a particular part of a season you're in can impact the other seasons that you're in. They were in a season of marital discord, but the issue wasn't necessarily the discord between spouses. It was actually the lack of convergence in their vocational place, in the place of vocation. Once that became like this blessing from God, there was more currency in the relationship they had with their spouse. He might say, what season are you in that you're waiting for God to make beautiful? It'd be my marriage, he would say. I'm waiting for God to make beautiful in its time my marriage. And I suspect that a few more months in this particular vocation will help their marriage greatly. How about you? What season are you in? If you're in a season, and your life has seasons, and you're in a season, and you've clarified the season that you're in, my suspicion is that you are now, and my friends, what we would call the waiting game. You don't really know exactly what God is doing, but this text tells you he's making things beautiful in its time. You don't really know how it'll all turn out, but this text tells you that the future belongs to him and not you, and that everything that God does endures forever. You don't really know if you'll be successful, but this text tells you to enjoy life and do good work, and that's good for you. So you don't have all the answers, but you have enough to go on. And now Solomon, in verse 22, in the waiting game, will tell you how to live. To sum it all up, give me the punchline, Solomon. What is this waiting game all about? Verse 22. So I saw, he's concluding, that there is nothing better than for a person than to enjoy their work, because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? I like how the CEV translation puts it. We were meant to enjoy our work, and that's the best thing we can do. We can never know the future. In your waiting game, in your season, find something you enjoy doing and do that. In your waiting game, find something you enjoy doing and do that. That is what Solomon is concluding. In your waiting game, in your season, find something you enjoy doing and do that. For the young parents who haven't had a date night in ages, please go to Mad Duck, buy you a nice expensive meal, and sit down and drink a beer. Or whatever you drink. Only one.
Child care provided by you.
Child care provided by
Hey, my couch is big enough to sleep on.
For those of you in the busy work mode, and it's all about doing the work and doing it in a good way, and it needs to get done, how about in this season, find something that you enjoy and go do that, like going for a round of golf, like walking through the park, like shutting it down for an hour or two to just sit on your porch. For those of you in that season of life where you're working on your marriage, and it's like not really seeing exactly eye to eye at this particular moment, may you find something you both enjoy doing and go do that like you did when you were dating, you know, those years ago. Do the stuff that you used to do when you were friends. Do that stuff. For those of you in the busy school mode, where you're in the business of achieving the next grade and the next test and the next year, and you're on the come up. You are in that achievement cycle. No knock to you. It's a season. In that season, would you find something you enjoy doing? Because I know it's not the paper that you're writing, and I know it's not the grade that you're chasing, and I know it's not the teacher that bugs you every time they're teaching. Would you just find something that you enjoy doing and go do that? Solomon says, after reflecting on his life, that this is the thing to do in the season that you're in. Find something you enjoy doing and do that. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be a walker. I don't mean the walker like the walker that the elderly use. I mean someone who walks. It just doesn't seem like walking is a good form of transport. It seems like it's kind of slow. I would rather walk up a mountain, or I would rather walk the Pacific Coast Trail, or I would rather somewhere where I can get to the end of something and say I walked that. But to walk for the sake of walking? It doesn't seem like there's that much going on that I would be interested in. But you know, after sabbatical, Jesus was very clear with me. Walk at the speed that you can hear my voice. So however fast you can hear however much you can hear my voice, you can move at that speed. Practically speaking, that means that, for example, on a Tuesday, I will make a list of all the things that I need to do that week, and it's really long. If you're like me, you like lists. You make little check boxes. You'll even do things before having put it on the checkbox, but you'll write it down just so you can check it off. Anybody like that? That's me. That's me. That's what I do. I'm an achiever type. I'm an achiever type that makes sure every hour of the day has something, and I feel like a loser if 1 hour of the day has nothing. Literally. I feel like depressed if 1 hour of the day is unaccounted for. Well, after sabbatical, I came back and the awareness that Jesus wanted a different habit for me. And so, every Tuesday I would make a list of all the things that I was going to accomplish that week. Move at the speed that you can hear my voice, Jesus said. So, I look at my list and I ask Jesus, of all the things that are on my list this week, what do you want me to do? And then I listen, and I read Scripture, and I pray. Sometimes I worship. And whatever draws my attention on that list, I do that stuff. And it's usually not all the stuff on the list. Some of the stuff gets pushed to the weeks in the future. It's kind of annoying for all the people around me. But it's faithful to God. And so I continue to do it. One of the ways that I fill my week now is on Monday mornings, for example, Heidi and I will spend 3 to 4 hours walking and praying for every single one of you by name. 3 to 4 hours we will spend praying for this church. And I have to say, in this season, I've become a walker. I enjoy the pace of 3 miles an hour or less. I enjoy tomorrow morning, I will be walking with Heidi, praying for Daisy. And I can't wait. Can you all please just get out of my house and get on with Monday? No, stay here as long as you wish. You see, in this season, find something that you enjoy and do that. That is the work. It is the thing. It is the perspective that you need in the season that you're in. I recently was speaking to a friend of mine about their relational disconnectedness. This is my friend Jay in Canada, who you hear me talk about often. Jay is a deep friend of mine, but he has been relationally disconnected from people, largely due to COVID, but also particularly where they live, in a place called Thunder Bay, Ontario. Off the beaten track, hard to get to. And the other day he called, smiling ear to ear. He said, God provided a friend. I said, who? He's a climber. He goes to our church, and he invited me climbing. Turns out we have a climbing area 45 minutes from where we live. I can't wait till you come and visit me. We'll climb there together. So what kind of rock is it? He says sandstone. Sandstone, I love sandstone. It's like in-cut edges, really fun. It's really great. You guys would love it, I'm sure. Maybe not. But for me, it's great. I love it. Yes. Can't wait to be up there with you. You see it? Jay's busy. Jay has a 3,000 person church with lots of people. Lots of busyness. But in this season of relational disconnectedness, God provided one rock wall 45 minutes away from where he lives, sandstone with a friend. Go find something you enjoy and do that. Your season, new seasons, need new perspectives. Here's the perspective. God makes everything beautiful in time. So find something you enjoy and do that. Lord Jesus, thank you that you are making all things new. All the rough spots of our life.